Often, I have been asked a variation of the following question, quote, people say, every parent I know, every single parent, including myself, has significant problems with parenting. I'm quoting somebody else talking to me. Frequently, problems that are overwhelming. I've been everywhere looking for answers, which are always, like in magazines, on the internet, in books, and so on. The answers are superficial, incomplete, glib, or otherwise useless. In the ridiculously effective parenting training, though, I have found the kind of answers I've always wanted. Direct, practical, useful, and best of all, they work. So here's my question, they say. Why isn't every parent grabbing hold of this training as though the lives of their children depended on it? That's a really good question. One of my sons is a professor of business at a major university. So he teaches MBA students. And one concept that they teach their students is motivation, which is understandable. What motivates employees to work on a project diligently? It sounds like the same subject, but it's not. Work diligently, quickly, and till it's completed. What motivates people to do that? Motivates employees. Here's what they've discovered, and they've done extensive studies about it, so they know what they're talking about. They're not guessing. First is that the effort leads to success. So in order to feel motivated, I have to believe that if I put in the described effort, I will perform well. Makes sense? I mean, if I put in the desired effort and there's no way I'm going to change in any way or won't perform well, then why try? But an example, if 100% of people who take a scuba class succeed in learning to dive, an instructor is offering this class and 100% of his students learn to dive, I'd be likely to be more motivated to take that class. Second factor in motivation, reward, which means if I perform well, I do well in the class, for example, will there be a reward? Again, an example. If 100% of the class, 100% of the people who graduate from the class receive a certificate qualifying them to participate in ocean dives. You can't just go out into the ocean and have your tank filled and dive. You have to be certified. You have to show them a card. And the class is guaranteed a trip to the Caribbean to dive, where they'll actually do it. Then that's a guaranteed reward. I'm going to be much more motivated to take that class. That gives me two reasons to be motivated. I will succeed in completing the class, and I'll get to a reward. I get to go on a dive. Wow. Third, satisfaction. Will I be satisfied with the reward? If I take the class and I go through all that blah, 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 and the reward is I get a candy bar. That's a lot of work for a candy bar. But no, will I be satisfied with the reward at the end? Example, if every diver graduating from the proposed class and who goes to the Caribbean dive and blah, 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 comes home raving, crazy happy about how fun the actual diving was, again, I'm going to be more motivated to take the class. Effort leading to success. Will there be a reward? And will I like the reward? And it turns out that the three factors multiply to determine whether I'll be motivated to do a thing. They don't just add or average. That turns out to be important, and I'm going to illustrate that. Let's assume that each factor is rated 0 to 10. 10 being, insanely motivated. And that I would have to be motivated at a level of 400 to do a thing. Not especially high, considering that the maximum motivation for anything would be 10 times 10 times 10, which is 1,000, like to enroll in a class. So let's see what happens as the factors vary. Let's say, let's go back to this class, that I believe factor 1, that my effort will produce success, because everybody finishes the class. That's provable. So I'm motivated at an 8. That's pretty motivated. I also believe factor 3. that scuba diving will be fun. I've seen documentaries on Jacques Cousteau and other people who are floating around in the water, and they look like they're having a great time. So we'll call that a level 9. But I'm not so sure that if I take the class, I'll actually make it to the Caribbean. I'm going, I've heard of a lot of people who sell classes just to sell the class. And then afterwards they go, oh gosh, we couldn't make the dive because it's hurricane season, or I'm not sure I'm going to make it to the Caribbean and actually go on a dive, because you have to have a regulator and you have to rent a suit, and that one's more difficult. And I'm not so sure. So that now, Factor 2 has a rating of, well, let's call it 3. But we have an 8 and a 9 and a 3. Now, the average of these 3 numbers is almost 7. So you would think 7 out of 10. That would be a sufficient motivation for somebody to do something. No, because remember, the motivation is a result of multiplying the factors, not averaging them. So if you multiply them, 8 times 9 times 3, unless I've really forgotten my math, produces a motivational level of 216. Not even close to the level that would be required for me to take the class. I'd require at least half, 500 out of 1,000. 216? Nah. So if even one factor in motivation is missing or rates really low, the motivation to do a thing disappears. One significant obstacle will do it for you. If you're motivated in 100 ways, but there's one big obstacle, we stop. Now let's see how this factor rating works when motivating parents to be interested in learning how to raise their children. First, effort leading to success. Most parents have tried anger, intimidation, begging, pleading, reasoning, bribing, micromanaging, hands-off approach, complaining, repetition, punishment, and it goes on. Everything that they've read about, heard about, or experienced themselves as children, or seen their friends do. And nothing has worked for the parents. The kids are having a great time doing whatever they want to do and being snotty. But it doesn't work for the parents. Not even close to success has been reached. So the parents simply don't believe that any amount of effort would enable them to complete a course, even though it's different from things they've done before. Still, it's just another technique in their mind. So why would they complete a course promising genuine change in parenting? And I don't blame them. If nothing they've ever tried has worked, in their minds, what are the odds that one more thing would suddenly be successful? So this factor has a rating, both from the reasoning that I've been using and from my experience with parents. This has a factor with most parents, a motivational factor of about 1 out of 10. Not kidding. Second thing, reward. Most parents have never seen anything modify their children's behavior. Now, we're not talking about a course. We're talking about seeing a difference in the kids. Not even for a moment. Well, maybe with bribing briefly. I'll give you $100 if you pick up your shirt off the floor. There are kids who would actually roll their eyes and compute whether it was worth it. I'm not making this up. So they've tried everything. They've never seen the kids change. So why would something new yield a real and lasting reward, even if they complete the course? So they go, nah, I don't think it will. So what do we rate this factor? A 1 out of 10, maybe less. Third, satisfaction. If I do succeed in finishing the course and there is a reward, will I be satisfied with it? Will I like the changes? How in the world would a parent even be able to imagine this reward? The reward that does come from unconditionally loving and teaching children. Most parents have never even met a parent, because I've interviewed thousands, who isn't drowning in the job. They don't even know one. Nor have they met well-behaved and happy children. Now, you could meet children who appear to be obedient. They're just simply scared to death. Well-behaved and happy. They've never met one. So how could they conceive of parenting being fun, fulfilling, and even enjoyable? impossible. So rating, 1 out of 10. Now let's do the math. This is going to be easy math from the figures above. Taking the 3 ratings that we just did, that would be 1, we're multiplying, remember, times 1, times 1. No matter how slow you are in math, you can do this one. That's 1. The total is 1 out of a possible score of 1,000. So not terribly surprising that most parents are completely unmotivated to take a course in parenting. They're completely uninterested. They're not motivated. They don't believe that it's possible. That's all. And there's one more factor not mentioned in the MBA courses on motivation. Desperation. When parents are confronted with sufficient whining, complaining, fighting, arguing, defiance, hitting, and yelling, sometimes they are motivated to try anything. Or if there's sufficient addiction to alcohol, drugs, porn, video games, and more. Or if there's cutting or imprisonment or suicidal threats or thoughts or actual suicide. Well, then desperation becomes pretty motivating. The problem with desperation as a motivating factor is that by the time desperation becomes motivating, the problems that led to the desperation are often utterly impossible to solve. That's a problem. The child is so entitled now and angry and afraid and lost that they refuse to give up the only tools that have ever enabled them to survive. They will not give up their addictions and other behaviors that have numbed their pain. In short, if parents wait until desperation is their prime motivation, it's usually too late to help the child, especially obviously in the case of suicide. And I've had to deal with more of those than I want to tell you. The parent finally got motivated to parent their child when the child was dead. And everybody was surprised, of course. And they're mourning and they're crying and they're scheduling a funeral or a cremation for their child who once was a laughing 4-year-old because they ignored all the signs. They weren't motivated to do anything about it, but now they want to, and there's nothing to do anything with. This appears to be an impossible dilemma. As parents, we're either not sufficiently motivated or our motivation comes too late. So what can we do about this? Awareness, insight, and foretelling the future. 1, 2, 3. So let's go through them. First, an explanation of awareness and insight, 1 and 2. They're pretty closely related, so I'm just going to combine them. When children behave badly, 4 factors tend to operate strongly that keep us from doing anything at all. First, the norm. Entitled, angry, and addicted children are now so common that both children and parents have come to accept it as normal. Well, these conditions actually now are normal, meaning that they fall within the norm or the average or the usual, but they're not healthy. In fact, they're horrifying. If a child's unhealthy behavior is considered normal by him, which includes his peers, he will fight to the death his right to continue that behavior. Many children believe that there's a divinely given and constitutional right given for them to be married to their phone. And if the parent regards the behavior as normal, like as in, well, other kids are the same, then the parent won't do anything about it either. And the behavioral cancer grows to its natural conclusion. And we know what the natural conclusion of a cancer growing is. When we accept unhealthy as the norm, we're in pretty deep trouble. And that's where we are, almost everybody, right now with parenting. We don't want to see it. That's number 2. The second factor that keeps us from doing anything. We just don't want to see it. If we recognize a behavior as counterproductive or counter to happiness, then we'd actually have to do something about it, wouldn't we? Mostly we parents are astonishingly selfish. We don't want to get up off the couch and deal with whatever civil war is going on in the next room. Much easier to put in earplugs and an eye mask or headphones and watch a football game. Third, we don't want to admit our part in it. If a child behaves badly on a regular basis, we have to come to one of two conclusions. Either A, the child is inherently bad, which no parent wants to admit. Well, not entirely. Some parents like admitting the child is bad, which is why they're eager to have their child diagnosed as ADHD so they can give them a pill. Or B, we have been neglectful in doing what it takes to help the child avoid or conquer the behavior. So it's either the child's fault or it's our fault. And many parents do opt for the child is just fatally defective. We don't like B. We don't like thinking, oh, now I have to do something because I've been a defective parent. And the fourth obstacle to doing something is magical thinking. We love this one. We want to win the lottery. We hope that our dream job will drop from the sky into our lap. We hope that unacceptable behavior from a child will just go away. We actually say things like, oh, it's just that age. Like what? One more year and they're going to quit being selfish and entitled? Or they'll grow out of it. With that logic, we would just hope that, well, when we're diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, that we'll just grow out of it. In a way, we will. Dead. We must be more aware of the behaviors of our children that are not loving or responsible, because either kind of behavior will condemn a child to a lifetime of personal misery, addiction, severely troubled relationships, horrible parenting, and sometimes death. Which brings us to the third answer to what we can do about our abysmal attention to children. Foretelling the future sounds cool. Once a child acquires a set of survival techniques, behaviors that appear to be their actual personality, who they really are, they are not likely to give them up. These survival behaviors, all the entitlement, anger, defensiveness, arguing, addictions, that's not who they are. They're only the means that a child uses to decrease their pain. But they hang on to them tightly because no pain is better than pain. The longer we wait to do something definitive about these behaviors, the more impossible it becomes to do anything at all. And this is where we foretell the future. So, a 3-year-old child, picture it, is whining, demanding, entitled, and insisting on you doing everything. I can't tie my shoes, the child says, because the child has learned that then you will tie their shoes. I can't pick that up off the floor because then you'll do it. A child who is that whining and entitled at age 3 without any serious intervention, that child will grow up with those same qualities, which will make personal happiness impossible. It will make a fulfilling career highly problematic and genuinely connected relationships unthinkable. It starts at 3. We point to somebody and go, how could somebody act like that? Because nobody did anything when the child acted just like that when they were 3. That's how. It's not a mystery. As parents, we have to look at a particular behavior and see how it will play out years and decades from then. Foretell the future. That can be very motivating. If we don't extend the effects of that behavior into the future in our minds, a child who's doing this, if they keep doing it, what happens? Then the child never will see it. The child will never say, I've really got to stop being selfish because this is going to interfere with my future relationships. That's never going to happen. And we'll have a child that's doomed to a lifetime of victimhood and confusion about how they got to the terrible place they're in. I see it every day. I have counseled thousands of adults who have no idea how they became so miserable. And only a few questions from me reveal that it all began at age 3 or 2 or 4 or young or birth. But it's not hopeless. We can become more aware and insightful. We can learn how to love our children and to address every unloving and irresponsible behavior, giving our children a chance at happiness for a lifetime. There is no greater gift we could give them. Forget Christmas and birthdays. This is the gift. No greater effort to which we could possibly devote our lives.